Alright, people. Let's talk about Blizzard. This is one of the hottest topics right now in the video game community. This story first started developing about 2 days ago when Blizzard posted a blog note talking about their hard decision, as they call it, to cancel the Heroes of the Storm Global Championship and another event called Heroes of the Dorm. So pretty much all the eSports events that have been previously scheduled for 2019 have been completely scrapped. And due to how such short notice this is, it's like what, less than 2 weeks before the holidays. A lot of people are scrambling on what to do. People who stream, play esports, or do anything related to the game where they pretty much make money off of doing that. They don't know what the hell to do. These esports players pretty much dedicate most of their time to getting better at the game so that they can compete in the championship game. And it means a lot to them, not only, as a sense of accomplishment, but because this is how these people pay their bills. This is how these people make money. So for Blizzard to just all of a sudden abruptly decide, it's not like they're like, okay, hey, this is the 2018 Heroes of the Storm Championship, right? This is the last year we're going to do it. Sorry, but it's the last year we're going to do it. It's not going to happen in 2019. Instead, what they decided to do, they didn't do that. They decided, okay, they've been saying for the past few months, from what I understand, I'm not really in the esports community, so I don't know all these things. Plus, I'm not too familiar with Heroes of the Storm. But from my understanding, this is what happened. Is that they've been saying for the past few months, they haven't been announcing anything new regarding, like, where the 2019 tournament's going to take place, what day it's going to be, and all of those, details. They're saying, don't worry. We're going to update you on the information. We're just finalizing everything, so don't worry, we'll give you information soon. Instead, what they decide to do is release this blog post 2 days ago on Blizzard, on the Blizzard website, saying, yeah, sorry, it was a tough decision, we're very sorry, but it's for the best for our company and our company's growth. We're just canceling the entire tournament. I honestly have a feeling that what happened, I'm just speculating, I can't be 100% sure because I don't work for Blizzard. But I had a feeling that Blizzard had every intention of doing this tournament next year. But remember, Blizzard is a subsidiary of Activision. The name of the company is Activision Blizzard. And that makes you think, oh, the two companies are like on equal footing and they just merged together. No, the Activision side of the business is really who calls the shots. For a while they were kind of independent. Activision didn't really push, didn't really instruct Blizzard on how to handle Overwatch and other games like that. And they pretty much gave Blizzard pretty good discretion on how to handle their games and their releases ever since the merger or acquisition, whatever you want to call it. But it seems like over the past year, Activision has really started to have increasing influence on Blizzard, and that has a lot to do with the fact that Blizzard games not being as profitable as Activision games, causing a decrease in the stock price for Activision Blizzard stocks. So, corporate is trying to make Blizzard more profitable by one thing that they're doing is they're making Blizzard release their games more frequently, because Blizzard's been known for making games and then continuing to support those games even for like up to a decade. Those days might be over. You might get an Overwatch 2 sooner than you guys think, because Activision wants games to be released more frequently on the Blizzard side of things. They release a Call of Duty game every year. Any big Activision franchise you could think of, they release games very frequently to keep the cash cow milking, basically, to keep milking that cash cow. And you can see the reflection of the stock prices that it's a working formula. Keep pumping out games every year. People keep buying said games, and that's their growth strategy, is just to keep pumping out crap. But on the Blizzard side of things, they have a completely different business model, a completely different way of looking at things. And Activision is increasingly spreading their influence on Blizzard. They're making Blizzard release games more frequently, like I said. And I honestly think that what happened in regards to this eSport tournament is that whoever's, the people on the Blizzard side of things that were organizing the tournament got a call from corporate saying, hey, this tournament, Heroes of the Storm is not really a huge game in terms of, like, compared to Overwatch. Overwatch is a huge game. Everyone talks about Overwatch. Like, Overwatch is a pop culture icon, basically, at this point. Like, if you ask a random person down the street, like, hey, do you know what Overwatch is? I mean, that would kind of weird, just randomly asking a person down the street if they know what Overwatch is. It's kind of weird. But, you understand what I'm saying, though. Like, most people would at least be familiar with the name Overwatch. Not so much Heroes of the Storm, right? I mean, Heroes of the Storm in its own right is a very successful game. It's a pretty successful MOBA. But it's just not taking off in comparison to the other big franchises like Overwatch, like Call of Duty. You know what I mean? Activision just doesn't see this game as a profitable endeavor. They're going to continue releasing updates, but they don't feel like holding these tournaments because, holding tournaments is very expensive. You have to hire a production crew. You have to do, you have to plan it out. You have to have a venue. You have to do all these things. Holding an esports tournament is a very expensive thing to do. And I guess, the people over at corporate feel it's not a worthwhile endeavor for them to just, to keep doing the tournament for a game that's not necessarily making them as much money as they want it to make. It's not a big franchise like Call of Duty or Overwatch or even StarCraft. You know what I mean? Like, it's just not. Heroes of the Storm is just not making enough money for Activision to justify this tournament continuing to be held. So, as a cost-cutting measure, just like, you know what? Let's just not hold this tournament. Who cares? That's pretty much what their whole mentality is. Obviously, corporations, they care more about making money than the livelihoods of people who rely on these games to be successful, who rely on these tournaments to continue. Obviously, Activision doesn't care about that. So, I think that's what happened. I think Activision's increasing influence on Blizzard, I think this is just another effect of that. It's another outcome of Activision's increasing influence on Blizzard's decisions, on how Blizzard runs things, basically. I mean, that's how I see it. And, I part of me feels really bad for these people because literally 1 week ago, they were still playing the game, getting their esports team together and getting ready for this tournament. And they were getting paid. Then just on Thursday, they find out, when everyone else finds out, when the public finds out, that, hey, you don't have a job anymore. Sorry, but you don't have a job anymore. Honestly, I do have some mixed feelings about this. Obviously, as you guys could tell over the past 9.5 minutes of me rambling, I do feel bad for these people. I do think it's messed up what they did, meaning Blizzard or Activision or whoever the hell calls the shots. Most likely Activision. But there's another part of me that's kind of thinking, okay, you kind of knew what you were getting into, right? Like not like, obviously not like, you didn't obviously no one could have expected the tournament to just have gotten shut down like that. That's not what I'm trying to say. Like, no one could have expected that. Like, the news was released on Thursday. There was not a single soul on Wednesday night thinking, oh yeah, this tournament's getting canceled. Because as far as the public knew, this tournament was going to happen. But what I'm rather trying to say is that when you get into this industry of playing esports, when you do that for a living, right? The gaming industry as a whole is already volatile, right? You have developers and publishers closing down, right? Not too long ago, Telltale just abruptly closed down and all of their employees got effed over. Years ago, THQ was a big deal, shutting down, and a lot of people's jobs were in limbo. And then you also have publishers closing down developer studios. So definitely, just having a job in the industry in general is not... Your job security is pretty much non-existent. Who even knows next year, depending on how well Anthem does, maybe there won't be a BioWare anymore. Maybe you won't get a Dragon Age. You know what I mean? You never know. Because really, investors are really banking on this game Anthem to do so well. And part of me has a feeling that it's not going to do... I mean, I don't know. I don't know for sure. But I have a bad feeling about Anthem. But we'll see. But there's a very good chance that BioWare, one of the most iconic developing studios in the entire industry, might not exist in 2020. Right? So, I mean, the point I'm trying to make is that, yes, while the entire industry is volatile, the esports side of the industry is probably the most volatile. Because most esports players, I mean, you have, that guy Sonic Fox who won the tournament. He does play a variety of different fighting games. He doesn't just play one. But most professional esports players focus on only one game, and that makes sense, right? Because they want to be the very best at a certain game, like Overwatch. You're not going to play Overwatch and Fortnite competitive at the same time, right? You want to focus on one game so that you make sure that you're the very best at that certain game that you can be at, like Overwatch. So you're obviously not going to play other games because your livelihood pretty much depends on you doing really well at the game. Right? Because if you start to suck, if you start to slip off a little bit and you're not on par with your competition, you might get dropped. Right? So, yeah, obviously playing esports are volatile because when you're focusing on that one game and, you're living, your way of life, your income depends on you, it pretty much depends on that one game staying relevant, right? Obviously, you're not going to get these $1 million winning prizes if the game isn't as popular as it used to be, right? So the game has to maintain its relevancy. And that's kind of hard because obviously a game is at its prime during the first few months or year of its life cycle. The only few exceptions I can think of are probably like Rainbow Six Siege and games like that really sucked at first. But, over time they actually grew in popularity. But usually that doesn't happen. Maybe CSGO is another thing I could think of where it actually grew over time. But with a lot of games, especially games like Heroes of the Storm, that's not really as relevant as games like Overwatch are. I don't think the average person knows what Heroes of the Storm actually even is. The average gamer probably doesn't even know what Heroes of the Storm is. So, that's a problem because, if the game's not doing as well as other games are, because all these esports, all these games, in a way, compete with each other for relevancy, right? You want to be the most relevant game, so if you're in the esport of that game, you can make the most money. But when a certain game is not doing very well, I'm not trying to say that Heroes of the Storm is a commercial failure, but, over time, if the game's not growing, and it's losing, it's losing players instead of gaining players, That's not a good thing. So pretty much what I'm saying is that when you decide to make a living off of playing one game, you're really taking a gamble because you really you're doing this expecting the game to not only be well, do well commercially. But I think at that point, like obviously the game is doing well enough for you to decide to do it because you're not just gonna like say I'm gonna play professional Gmod or something like that. It obviously has to be a game that already has a well established online presence and thus justifying the need for an esport at all, right? But at the same time, you're also banking on that game to continue doing well over years because this is your job, right? The game can only be relevant for 1, 2, or even 3 years, right? You need that long-term job security, and the problem is when you're doing professional esports, there's no such thing as job security at all. So while a huge part of me, really, my heart goes out to these people who don't know what the hell they're going to do anymore because their contracts have been terminated. All of a sudden now they don't have a source of income anymore. But there's really another part of me that's kind of like, well, that's just kind of how the business works. Even though it's the way that they did it, don't get me wrong, the way that Activision, Blizzard, whoever did this is awful. It's terrible, right? But at the same time, like look at this tweet right here. I mean, I'm probably not going to have it up, but this is a tweet from Liam O'Malley. He's a professional Heroes of the Storm player. I'm just going to read it to you guys. For the past 3 years, I've committed 8 to 10 hours a day into Heroes of the Storm to improve to make it into the Heroes Global Championship one day. I even dropped out of college to pursue my dream. Finally, I did it and was going to be playing for End of My Sports as Offlane in 2019. Now I'm told it's cancelled. I'm so sad. Well, Liam, I feel terrible for you. You put so much time into this game, and you feel like you finally, after 3 years, you finally realized your dream of being in the global tournament. But at the same time, you gotta live with the choices that you make in life. You did not make a good choice. Dropping out of college to play professional esports is not a good decision. Like the only time I'm gonna say dropping out of college makes sense for doing esports is if your name is Ninja and you're already making a shit ton of money anyway. But when you're just someone like Liam, where the esports are really the only thing that you would like, the only source of income that you would have. Like, I'm sorry, but dropping out of school for that is not a good decision because you spent 3 years working on this. But the problem with esports is that not a lot of games make it past 3 years. Not a lot of games stay relevant after 3 years. 3 years ago, you had no way of knowing that Heroes of the Storm would be relevant 3 years from now. Meaning right now, 2018. In 2015, you had no way of knowing. You took a huge risk, man. And unfortunately, you dropping out of school to do this was a very bad decision on your part. So, I don't know what to think. I really honestly don't know what to think. I mean, I obviously know that what Blizzard did was wrong. I obviously know that it's a terrible thing that hundreds of people lost their job right before the holiday season. Those are things that I know. But I think another thing that I know is that people should be held responsible for their poor choices in life at the same time. You know what I mean? It might sound harsh me saying that, but it kind of needs to be said. Maybe the moral of the story is, don't drop out of school to play eSports. Maybe that's what the moral of the story is. Because while, maybe for a few years you're going to be making a lot of money, more money than you could ever make with a bachelor's degree in anything, cool. But how long is that going to last? Chances are it's not going to last that long. Even people who play Call of Duty is one of the most successful esports in the industry. Call of Duty seems like, I don't know, it might be running on its last legs. It's definitely been declining a lot over the years. So if you're a professional COD player, maybe you should start, looking into a backup. That's the thing. I'm not completely against people pursuing their dreams, no matter what it may be. It's not even me looking down upon people that play video games for a living. It's nothing like that either. It's more of fiscal responsibility, is what I'm trying to explain here. It's not fiscally responsible to do what Liam did. It's just not. And while it's definitely, I'm not trying to kick people while they're down or anything like that, but rather I think this can be maybe thought of as a learning experience for some people who are thinking of doing what Liam did, to maybe reconsider that. Like, one of my best friends, his dream is to become a professional wrestler. Okay? There's a very good chance that he's not going to make it. So, he has a backup plan. He's studying business or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, you can't... I understand that esports require, a certain amount of time in the day in order for you to be good at the game. And going to school might conflict with that. But you need to make choices. There are people who go to school and work at the same time. You know what I mean? And they do it. And these are people who work 9 to 5 office jobs. You're sitting on your chair with your keyboard and mouse. Like, I'm not saying that what you're doing should be looked down upon. Rather, what I'm saying is that if these people who work 9 to 5 jobs can do that, a lot of people do that in school at the same time, then so can you. You can't just, if you throw your cards on the deck and you pretty much gamble your life like that, and things don't end up so well, you can't be surprised. That's pretty much what I'm trying to say. Is that, yeah, it sucks, but I think people need to be more responsible. That's honestly what I think. And some people might interpret it the wrong way, saying, oh, he's trying to kick people while they're down. He's just an asshole. No. Like I said, I honestly feel awful for these people. But on the other hand, you can't just completely blame Activision or Blizzard on what they did. And just, do nothing but feel sorry for these people who lost their jobs or whatever. Whatever you want to call. Playing esports professionally, it's a job, but there's no financial security at all. So, people need to be more responsible with their life choices. That's pretty much the moral of this entire story. And that's what I have to say about this.